So, wanted to talk a little bit more about the calorie allowance. So, it's not something we focus on too much in our programme because we normally say, and something we do really believe in, that the calories tend to take care of themselves. If you're eating more of the right foods, the Warrior 20, getting more sleep, drinking more water, more motivated because of exercise, you tend not to overeat anyway. But there is one trend that we tend to notice, which is something where just having a little bit of a phase of being a bit more accountable to our calories can be beneficial. Is one of two things happen. Number one, we've taught you more of the right foods. You're eating more of the right foods, but because you start to get more creative and inventive with different recipes and really enjoying those foods, over time you start to eat a little bit more and more of them without realising. So you're eating good foods, but just portion size has increased a little bit too much. The second one is, after having some really good progress initially, we tend to then kind of binge a little bit too much, or just think that a little bit of things won't hurt, and unfortunately it becomes more than a little bit. So I'm sure a few of you might be nodding away that is a fair comment for you, that we just think we can maybe get away with a little bit more than we actually can. So for those two reasons, just being a little bit more accountable to calorie intake for short periods of time can be beneficial. And here's what we're talking about. So when we've done your in-body measurements, that has given us your basal metabolic rate, which is based upon your body fat, height and muscle mass, to give us an estimate of your metabolism. And basal metabolic rate is basically how many calories your body was burning off without doing anything. If you were to wake up, lie in bed all day without moving, that's how many calories your body's burning off. We've then got our recommended calories, which is basically adding in an estimate of how many calories you would burn off based upon normal daily activity. So average daily activity for people, a little bit of walking around at work, etc, etc. So obviously if you've got a more active job, your kind of baseline will be a little bit higher than that. If you've got a very sedentary job, it will be slightly lower than that, but it's an estimate of your daily calorie output without taking into consideration any strenuous exercise or anything like that. So we then need to create a calorie deficit, which normally would be about 500 calories a day, which is about 3,500 calories a week. And if we get that correct, that is a pound of fat lost per week. Now, with the calorie deficit, there's two ways we can do that. We can increase your activity levels, or we can reduce your intake, or a combination of both. So some of you that maybe come out at 1,600 calories as recommended for your recommended calories, we might go 1,200 calories if you're maybe just doing twice a week training, or we might go 1,400 calories if you're training 4 or 5 times a week. But the combination of reducing the calories slightly with increasing your activity should do the trick. And as I said in the last video, if not, we monitor it and we adjust it. Now for some, you may be feeling that your calorie suggestion is slightly low. Now it shouldn't be, because if your recommended calories is based upon your metabolism, and if your metabolism is quite low, you shouldn't really be desiring that many more calories than that if you're eating the correct foods. So it's more about how well you fill yourself up with the calories that you do eat. So it shouldn't be as challenging as it seems. If you feel that your calorie suggestion is really, really low, that's based upon your metabolism, it should be fairly accurate. Now there will be a slight reduction in obviously your intake versus what your body needs, but the goal is that we're trying to then make up the rest by burning more fat. So that, although that's a slightly slower process, you may have a little bit of hunger to put up with later, which I'll talk about in a bit, in fact. Okay, the most important point now here is this has got to be on average over, whether it's over a week, a month or longer. So it's not just day to day, because most people day to day is okay, but then the weekend and you know, 400, 500, 600 extra calories over a couple of days at the weekend, or even 3 days at the weekend, will offset 200 or 300 calorie reduction on the other days through the week. So it's really easy to basically blow that calorie deficit with eating more at the weekends. And that's why most people turn around and say, oh, actually, I don't really eat that much. But actually, if you're not losing weight, it means that when you are eating more than that, you're eating significantly more that's actually offsetting all of the results. Or if your recommended calorie intake is 1400 calories, maybe you're 1400 on average most days. Some days you're a little bit less, but some days you're significantly more, and that wipes out the days that are less. So that's how it works. So you have to do it on average over the time, which means one of two things. Number one, it means we avoid binging as much as possible, especially for the 8 weeks. For a short period of time, try and avoid binging as much as you can. And number two is to offset any excess days in one way or another. The way I like to do it is, if you've had a really high day maybe at the weekend, then you have what you call a fasting day in the week, normally either the day after or the day after that, so it might be Monday or Tuesday. And on that day, what you will do is, the day before you'll probably stop eating maybe at 6 or 7 p.m, and the next day you might skip breakfast or have a later breakfast, and you might only have 2 meals on that day. And if your normal calories is 1500, let's say, but you only eat 2 meals on that day, and they're similar meals to what you normally have, then actually on that day you're down to 1000, which will make up for the excess of the weekend. Now, if you had 2 or 3 excessive days, you might have to follow that approach maybe 2 or 3 times during the week as well. I would say no more than 2 days to do this. So the concept is, you will have some days where you have excess, and you should be allowed to go and enjoy yourself. But just offset it by having what I call a fasting day, which just means maybe you have 2 meals a day. You might have a kind of brunch at, say, 11 a.m, or an early lunch at 12, and then a meal at 6 p.m, and that's it through the day. Okay, and that will offset any of the excesses, and make sure that on average you're hitting that calorie deficit and not wiping it out with 1 or 2 excessive days. Okay, so with this, a couple of things we can expect. We do need to kind of expect a little bit of hunger, because you're not getting as many calories as your body needs. As I said before, we're trying to replace those calories by burning more fat, which is the objective, which should be a good thing. But it does take a little bit longer for the body to burn that fat. So in that time, there will be some signals to your brain saying, hey, we need to eat a little bit more, give us a little bit more calories because we need it. Hopefully, consciously, you just need to wait a little bit longer for your fat cells to start to release that energy, and that hunger will subside. It's one of those things, food is so available now, we've actually become unable to put up with hunger. So essentially, don't go running to the fridge or the cupboard at the first sign of hunger. Learn to put up with a little bit of hunger. And just as a real simple rule of thumb, if you can be more comfortable with a small level of hunger, you're going to get better results, because you won't eat as soon as maybe you are currently, or you won't need to eat as much food. So accept that on the program, when we are reducing the calories, you maybe will experience a little bit of hunger, but put up with it. And when your body starts to burn fat more quickly, you won't be as hungry anymore, so it will get easier. Also, because you won't have, we talked before about the hormones leptin, which tells your brain to stop eating, that you're satisfied, but the more of that you produce, the less effective it becomes. So by eating less, you're producing less of that hormone, then it works more effectively. So it's a bit of a paradox that you actually eat less, but when your body gets used to eating less, you actually become less hungry as well, because of those hormones working more effectively for you. So good luck with it. The calorie deficit is a really important part, and unfortunately, if it's weight loss you're looking for, it is a non-negotiable part of it. It's just that for most people, when we start out, just eating more vegetables and protein, drinking more water does the trick. But right now, we're just going to have a little bit of a phase of being a bit more accountable for it, to make sure you're getting the results that you want before Christmas.